So all my life before I met Swami Dayananda, I'd read lots and lots of spiritual books, and they would say, and they would always talk about the mind and how the mind is disturbed and how the mind needs to be still, and if you still the mind, everything. Are you familiar with that type of thing?
Yeah.
Even within Vedanta, the Vedanta tradition, they often talk about the mind. So there are ways of talking about this sort of stuff that is imbued in all of the books, right? Now, but Swami Dayananda had this very interesting thing that the problem is centered on you, and he says also Vedanta is you. Interesting, right? So, and as you know, when I listened to Swami Dayananda, I took him psychologically. I was interested in only bringing about a psychological transformation in me where I was free from my upsets. So I was only interested, if I could not understand the existential significance of what he's saying, I knew I had to sit with it until I did, because I knew I always found that if I stuck with it, I'd always eventually find the existential significance. In other words, the understanding that would change my being. Okay, so, and what I mean by that is the most wonderful thing for us human beings to be able to look through the eyes of wisdom, and that is truly a gift from God. So that it's God's communication to us, reality's communication to us, and it obtains in us. And what's good about it is it can bring us home. That's the test. That's what real knowledge is. And when I'm knowing like that, I am being that knowing. That's the whole point with Vedanta. So the knowing and the being are not dualistic. So for example, if I'm sitting with myself with the understanding that God's presence is present, it's actively working on me, drawing me to itself. When I am knowing that, I'm entrusting, because it turns me off as a agitated, trying to find and trying to understand type person. So wisdom governs us. If it's wisdom, in fact, it governs us. Okay? Yeah. So the whole fruit of Vedanta is what they call non-dualistic knowledge. In other words, the wisdom is my way of seeing. I'm given the eyes of wisdom.
Yeah.
So when they talk about non-dualistic knowledge, it's a way of seeing that obtains in us as our way of seeing, and then our way of being corresponds to that way of seeing. So for an example, and we need wisdom. You know how in our Western scriptures it says, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth from the mouth of God. A beautiful saying. It's metaphorical, but I you know what I'm like with metaphor, right? So the thing is that's the bread of life. So, for example, I'm upset with Sylvia, and suddenly, the wisdom obtains in me as my way of seeing, wait a minute, this is my problem. This is this fundamental problem that's centered on me. So when I'm governed by that way of seeing, I change, don't I? I cease to blame. So when I'm governed by wisdom, this is what brings me home. This is the only way that brings me home. And the great thing is that wisdom, when it obtains in me, does not belong to Dayananda, whatever, it belongs to God, actually. It's obtaining in me as my way of seeing. And this is what he meant, you know, when he says, Vedanta is you. Okay, so it's a very, and so when we're talking about non-dualistic knowledge, when I am knowing what I am being what I am. So, but it's not something in a future event. So when I'm knowing what I am being what I am. Again, it's a non-dualistic knowledge. You see, because what happens is that we're so used to functional knowledge. I know that some people study Vedanta like that, by the way. I know Vedanta, I know what it's like. But the fruit of Vedanta is a methodology, which, and I must be frank here, Swami Dayananda, the Vedanta tradition as a teaching tradition, we don't really have that in the West. We don't.
Yeah.
So So, so it's a method, and the fruit of this method is wisdom. But wisdom it's not like, it's of a different order than the functional wisdom, you know, streetwise wisdom and social wisdom and all that stuff in the functional order. The specific thing about this wisdom is that it brings us to being different in the world. Being different in the world, because our way of seeing is our way of being. I know this is really basic stuff, but it's really important.
It is.
So, and we understand that all wisdom, and Swami Dayananda says, who's the ultimate teacher? Guess who he said the ultimate teacher is? Ishvara. It all comes from reality. So when reality obtains in Swami Dayananda, so when God obtains in Swami Dayananda as a way of being and a way of seeing, he then talks to us, and then we see as he sees, and that's the transformative factor. But the difference, with the Vedantic view of knowledge is this whole idea of non-dualism, non-dualistic knowledge. And people can be they can be a little bit, you know, sometimes they can be a little bit, what do you call it? Becomes a platitude, but the meaning of it is incredible, actually. Because I hadn't come across, not until I really met him, I didn't know what that meant. I read it in books, and I go, it's interesting. You know, I find it interesting, but I didn't see what it was.
So the being,
yep,
and the knowing is the non-duality. There's no separation between being and knowing.
Absolutely not. Right. And this is what's so good, because so what happens is that, so let's say, for example, the wisdom about the mind, that the problem is centered on me, right? Now, if I have the notion that the problem is the mind, I will struggle with the mind. Can't help it. If I think the mind is the problem, I'm, even in psychotherapy, you know, clients who hate, they're angry about their anger, they're sad about their sadness, and they're anxious about their anxiety. You're familiar with that?
Yes.
So if I have that view that the problem is the mind, then I cannot help but compulsively try to deal with the mind. Because
how do we define the mind here? How do we define the mind?
Well, what happens is that when we think of reactions, and you see, reactions occur, you see, unless we see our mind as part of the functioning of the universe, which is unfolding according to laws, we will think I've got my mind.
Okay.
And my mind is causing me trouble. I thought that. I thought that inside there was something terribly wrong with me. There must be, because I was depressed. It was black. I felt futile. Do you mean I didn't come to Swami Dayananda as this cool, you know, confident human being? Because I'm not. I'm still not a cool, confident human being. It just doesn't matter to me now. Right? So, but the thing, and I was confused, you know, like in the sense that there was not, that the clarity of wisdom did not obtain in me. So I was hungry for the bread of life, you know. And I had this idea that, why is it that I have these reactions? And then I'd fight with my suffering. Does that make sense? I would fight with my suffering. But even then I objectified the suffering, so it was away from me. There was this suffering here, and I was fighting it. It wasn't, what I didn't realize, I was being the sufferer. I didn't. So because that was so abhorrent to me, I would then objectify it and then struggle with it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And it was just, you know, and in the end, like, you know, after that struggle, what happened was, it was like, the more the struggle, imagine a smoking room, and the more I struggle, it creates more and more smoke, and the smoke gets denser and denser and denser and darker and darker. Are you familiar? Is that a working metaphor?
Yes.
Okay. that was my life. You know what I mean? And I mean, it wasn't, and I was so-called, you know, I thought I was once pretty intelligent, but I didn't see the difference between kind of ideas, because ideas were easy for me to deal with. Life was not easy for me to deal with, but ideas were. But so here I was struggling with myself, but I wasn't actually struggling with myself, because I never even arrived at the place where change occurs, which is I am being the suffering. Right? I didn't see that, Suzanne. I just didn't see it. And so
because it was outside of you.
Yes, until I dealt with it as what happened was I would be blind to the fact of where the suffering was. I project it as an object in order to fix it.
And that object would have been your mind.
So-called. It's actually it's only my imagination. It's a pernicious form of subjectivity, actually, because
but reactions and conditioning and all of the egoic tendencies that created the resistance.
Well, the egoic tendencies arise. But the problem was that, first of all, I thought the egoic tendencies, because I didn't understand Dayananda's thing, first of all, that the only thing we have choice over is action. The only thing. Right? So my existential condition, which is just given, right? The way I am being is just given. It arises naturally according to laws that we don't necessarily know about, but it's just given. And so here I am, it's given. Well, what am I going to do? Especially if it's miserable. Then I'd say, I'm suffering from misery. So I'd objectify the misery. I never saw that I and the misery were one and the same, and that was my problem. That I was, you know how he talks about a confusion centered on self. Now, when Latin confuse means con together, fuse, poured together. So you have two different things poured together. So here I was, me and the misery are poured together. And this is a confusion centered on self. So I am being the misery. It's not away from me. Now, when I think about it, as soon as I think about it, I've objectified it, haven't I? So I've now got a thought about what my misery is. I've got a thought. It's like, is the life and being you are, Suzanne, my thoughts about you?
No.
There can't be.
No.
It's impossible. So the same way here I am, I'm being miserable. I have a thought about my misery. So I create this idea based on interpretation about what my misery is. Right? And it's like suddenly it's like I'm looking at a snake now, aren't I?
Yeah.
There's no rope. And I have this reaction about this pain and misery. I can't stand this. It's just, I wish it would go away. Do you know what I mean? And so here is this dualism, isn't it? Self-dissatisfaction. I have a self that I hate. It's completely subjective.
Yes.
But.
So, yes. Go ahead with the but.
It's completely subjective, but I'm enclosed in this subjectivity.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually the wisdom isn't obtained. The wisdom of where the problem is not obtaining in me, and therefore I struggle because you know it's a very convincing experience that I'm struggling with an object away from me. That's a convincing experience that the location of the problem I'm having is not me. The location is my mind, and I'm the victim of my mind, of my mental states, of my misery, of my suffering.
So I have a question here. In Vedanta, the self-awareness or consciousness
Yep.
is the returning home with the help of Ishvara or grace.
Yeah, yeah.
So in this psychology of Dayananda,
yep.
how does that awareness or consciousness of that misery or that suffering affect resting in the lap of Ishvara? Do I need that?
Yeah, absolutely. Without, well, you see, this is the difference between me being a simple conscious person is only something I can be. It is never something I can think about, first of all, right? Because this is where it gets really, people get confused. I can't think about myself as a simple conscious person. If I'm thinking about myself, I've got an idea that I'm looking at. So God or what being myself is only something I can be, and I can be myself when I know what it means to be myself. That's the whole point. So he says there's three things about this. Atma is inconceivable, so I can't think it.
Correct.
It's not perceptible because so I can't form a concept of it in my mind. It's any concept I have of God or me being myself is not myself.
Right. It's an object in your awareness.
It's just delusional.
Just another object.
By the way, you can study Vedanta like this. Many people do, actually, I think. But anyway, I won't go into that because. But I think this.
So being a simple conscious person. Is what allows me then to.
You live it
see that I'm being the misery. Yet. Yeah. And that's where there's non-duality, because I'm being simple and conscious and aware of the misery that I'm being at the same
Exactly.
moment.
Now, but can we just go into that? So first of all, you got three things.
Okay.
You can't conceive it. If you conceive it as an object, it's not, you're delusional.
Right.
If you think you can perceive it, with the senses ordered to know objects. So you can't see it with the object, and you can't describe it. So it's indescribable, non-conceivable, non-perceivable. In fact, it's nothing. It's true. It's nothing. It's not a thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is
we have to be that.
Only way to know it, actually.
Yeah.
That's why it's non-dualistic.
Beautiful.
Okay. Okay. Now,
this is beautiful, Bede.
Okay. Yeah, this is very simple. It's Vedanta 101.
Yes.
Okay. Now.
Subtle.
Yeah, it is. Well, yes, it's because we're so confused. See, now.
And we're so identified with being other than ourselves.
Yeah, we're being a misery, right? Now.
Yeah, okay.
So, now, you know how he says self-acceptance, the basis of self-acceptance is the understanding of Ishvara. Okay, now this is a very, 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 very important wisdom. You see, you can take Vedanta, and Vedanta teaches scholastically. When I first encountered it, that's what I did. Because I had a good mind like that. I was good at that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? So, but that really isn't, it's a wrong road. It blocks everything. It's actually kind of like, it's like idolatry, actually. It's a substitution. It's an imitation subject, right? Now, so here you've got this functioning universe, right, of appearances, agreed? Okay, so the universe presents to us itself as a moving appearances. Okay, now when he says that it's an order, it means that he has a beautiful definition of order. You know, Aquinas says order is an arrangement of parts directed towards an end. Aristotle said order was the disposition of many in relation to one, and Swami Dayananda says order is the intelligent arrangement. Okay, so, for example, if you've got a whole lot of matches and you've chucked them on the table, there's no order, right? It's like a heap. But as soon as I arrange them in a certain way, like in a straight line, there's order there, isn't there? Now, this order can only be appreciated by the intellect, can't it? It's not, the senses are not, the senses which show you color can't see order here, but the understanding can appreciate order. My goodness, it can actually appreciate order, can't it? Isn't it amazing? It's
except for in a rainbow, we might appreciate the order of the colors in a rainbow.
Absolutely. That's some, yeah. But the mind understands an animal sees that, but doesn't go how beautiful. That's why Plato was very interested in the thing of beauty, goodness, and truth, because we can perceive beauty, and our heart responds to it. How come? Our senses are only showing us color and form, but something in us is moved by beauty, isn't it? So we can recognize beauty, right? Okay. The modernists disagree with this because they just say it's an interpretation and all that, but we won't go into that. But, so we have this order, which is an arrangement, an intelligent arrangement, which is always functioning perfectly in keeping with the intelligent arrangement it is. Mm-hmm. Can't help it. If I'm cut off from the light, guess what happens? I can't help but experience darkness. Mm-hmm. Right? So now what's interesting about Dayananda's teaching is our mind, right? Our mind, what happens in it, the reactions, they are also part of this universe that we're facing, which is this functioning of this intelligent arrangement, which is perfectly in keeping with the intelligent arrangement it is. It can't be any other way. So suddenly, when I learned this, that my mind wasn't me, right? That it was part of this functioning universe happening in front of me, which is pretty obvious as a fact, actually, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But I missed it. It was too simple. So this universe, and it's time bound because it's moving. That's time, isn't it? Time is persistence. It's change, right? So there's a lot of change going, a lot of time going on, and it's change in space. Okay, and it's matter and energy operating in space through time. Okay, that's that's the physics notion, matter, energy, space, and time, right? That's what this universe is, right? Now, and yet the wonderful thing is I can see this. I can see it, right? Normally I don't see it. I've got interpretations about it. I imagine about it, right? I have thoughts about it that I take to be it. But anyway, so my mind, the so-called my mind, I'm sitting here like this with myself, and thoughts are coming and going. I just don't care because that's the functioning of the universe. It says nothing about me. I used to think it said something about me. I thought deep down I have a pathology that I'm not discovering, and I need to get and understand it. I had that idea, because I could see, my sometimes strange and bizarre behavior socially and all of that stuff. It was difficult for me at the time. Right? But so you have this going on. So suddenly I'm sitting here with myself, okay, and I'm disgruntled. The feeling is being disgruntled. I don't care. This is the functioning of the universe. I don't have to try and control the universe. What I need to do is be myself in the face of the universe. So the whole emphasis is no longer on objects. The whole emphasis is completely away from objects. Because
by yourself, it's just the simple conscious person.
Absolutely. So that this, so you know how he says the basis of self-acceptance is the understanding of Ishvara. That even though you see, God doesn't punish us for our so-called ignorance, but if we're cut off from the reality of God, it can't help but be dark, because that's just lawful. It's punishing, but it's not given as a punishment, which is within our Christian traditions, that crazy notion of a wrathful God, which is a slander actually. But that's why there was a early father called Origen. If Christianity had based itself on that, we wouldn't have the trouble that we have. He basically said that he believed in universal salvation. Everyone eventually is brought home, no matter how bad they've been, and also that Jesus was a son of God, not the son of God. So here you've got this. So here I am. I understand that so even though the form of my experiences, I may not like it or whatever, but just like the form of a clay pot, the ever presence of clay. So even if there's an ugly pot or a pleasant pot or a pretty pot, no matter how bad the experience is, it can't take away the omnipresence of God. Because sorry?
Do you factor into that the entity is then, releasing karma or something when it has
well, given again, karma is just the order.
All right.
The fact that in this time, space, matter, energy, space world is that what you do has an effect, will produce fruit.
Right.
That's just the intelligent arrangement again. It's not God making it, it's just the way it works. Given that it's just simply it's what Aristotle called necessary. You know what he meant defined by necessary? Something that cannot not be. Something that cannot not be. So if I'm cognitively cut off from God, I can't help but be miserable. That's why people are miserable. And they deny the misery and then obsessively try and find a way to fix it, even though they deny it. So, all trying to become something is based on misery. If there wasn't the misery, you wouldn't be trying to become something in order to be not miserable. When Dayananda says that the only reason that people are struggling to be happy is because they're unhappy, I thought, oh, my God, that's so true. I mean, it's not an obvious fact.
Yeah.
So here I am. I'm sitting with myself. And I understand that the very presence of the given is the presence of the giver. Now, it doesn't mean that God is causing someone to have cancer or wars or any of that stuff, right? But they are the result of laws given this alienation from God, and it's not a good look. You know what I mean? It's a horrible experience, right? Human life is not a wonderful experience. It's life cut off from God, right? Cut off from reality, right? And we take our life and being to be this matter and energy entity existing in space and persisting through time, and we're going to die. That's the normal view. People can have spiritual notions, but that's the real view. That's why hence the fear. Now, so if I'm moving, if I'm moving, I'm upset one day, happy the next, high the next, I'm moving. I'm a space, time-bound spatial being, aren't I? Because movement, changing, is to do with matter, energy, space, and time, isn't it? And like the Buddha says, they're all codependent, aren't they? You can't have matter without energy. You can't have, you can't. So they all come as a package, right? Now, so here I am, and I understand that. Okay, here I'm just here, as I am, and I'm not responsible for my existential condition. That's just the laws. I'm not making it. I'm not to be blamed for it. It doesn't matter how vicious I feel or what reactions occur. They're just simply movements in space. They're actually movements of energy in space, aren't they? And through time. That's all they are. But I take them so personally. Oh God, and what happens is I get into self-judgment, agreed? Oh, I have that feeling, that's not very nice. Well, why can't I keep my mind quiet? All of this stuff. Right? Now, but if I have this understanding that, see, Dayananda said an amazing thing. He says the beginning of Vedanta is the understanding that Ishvara is the material cause of the universe. You know that? That's what he says. Material cause of the universe. Now, why is that so important? Because for him, God is omnipresent and not away from any form. So for him, any name and form was a transparency to the presence of God. So that's his understanding of mithya. Do you know that he said that mithya is not something you ascribe to an object? It's an understanding that exists in you.
Wow, very good.
Okay. Now, have you heard people say, "Oh, it's only mithya"? And you know what Dayananda said about it? He said, I strongly have objection to that. He said, because where there is mithya, there is sat. In other words, being, the presence of being. But he loved the word sat. I don't use the word sat because I'm a Western person. But where there is mithya, there is sat. Right? Now, so here I am. Now, so he says that Vedanta is a journey without distance. So I start with what I'm being. I'm being. If I'm here, Suzanne, sitting with myself, and there's a tremendous feeling of misery, what's the fact?
The feeling of misery.
Fine, yeah. Now, he says objective means because it's there, you're seeing it. Are you creating the misery or is it just given?
It's given.
Right. So it's out of my hands. Now, psychologically, we hate this. Human beings hate the fact that in terms of, not in terms of action, they're not helpless in terms of action and function.
Right.
But in terms of their existential condition, they are completely helpless.
Yeah.
They hate this. This is terrible because, and they don't want to even get near it, by the way. Right? Even though it happens to be a wonderful doorway, but because even being brought to the understanding you are helpless, this is just simply the result of laws. That's this wisdom obtaining in me, isn't it? Right. So here I am. I'm miserable, right? But we also have this. We have this doctrine. An appointment with myself is an appointment with God. In other words, the presence of God is not away from myself. Right? Not away from myself. Now this is, this is basic 101, but he puts it in the book, action, reaction, right? Now, so here I am. I have this understanding that the place where I meet God and myself is one and the same. God is not away from what I am being. That's in fact where I encounter God. Exactly the location. What I am being. God is not away from me. God is intimately embracing me at all times and drawing me to itself. That's why this Augustinian longing that we have. My heart is restless until I rest in thee. In the context of that desire, that's why we're interested in spiritual teachings, right? That's the reason why we can't help. We're going to be restless until we rest in thee. There's no other place. Now, so what happens is that we meet someone like Dayananda, or we come across some other spiritual teaching, because I don't think God's restricted to Hinduism. Okay, I'm a perennialist, so that doesn't work. So, but the thing is that, and we're talking about Dayananda's teaching here. The thing is that, so here I am, I'm miserable, right? Now, the natural thing is for me to move away from misery. Would you say that's true? Because the only thing that would make me stay with my misery is this, in the context of that longing for God and to go home, when I actually see that home is already here, and I can't, it's not away from me, and this is a journey without distance, that may not satisfy my pain-pleasure principle, agreed?
Right.
But it's very meaningful because of this longing for God.
And that's a cognitive process.
He says it's cognitive all the way, seeing. So long as we understand it's cognitive, not like in the terms of, you see, Dayananda would use the word cognitive, but he was used language very specifically. In Latin, cognize means knowing.
Yes.
Right? So he says Vedanta is cognitive all the way. Very good point, because what we're doing is we're living in understanding. We're not engaging in functional knowledge to attain an end.
Or imagining.
Or an imagining.
Right.
It's ridiculous. Right? So here I am. I'm sitting here like this. And you know how he would say nididhyasanam is you recall the words of the teacher. And he says, and then you just simply attempt to see the meaning without thinking. Now, why would he say that? Without thinking. Because, of course, it's because it's to be seen. Because this seeing is being. This is because it's non-dual knowledge. So here I am.
And thinking would imply judging or comparing or analyzing somehow.
Yeah, this whole analytical trip. Yeah. All this head trip.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, you probably don't. If you look at some of the things that on Facebook about Vedanta, I'm consciousness, and they go on and on and on and on, right? It's just, because the emotional content is this longing, this recognition that I'm empty, that there's a problem with me, I'm unfulfilled, there's something really getting me here. And this longing, Dayananda says you wouldn't have the longing for the object unless, because he says if it was natural for you to be unhappy, he says you'd be happy about being unhappy. He says if that was your nature to be unhappy, he says you'd be happy being unhappy. We're not. This is why he was so brilliant, really. So here you go. So you have this understanding, and what we're living is an understanding. We're not because we fall away from the understanding. That's why we need nididhyasanam, actually. We need first of all to get the knowledge. Then it's not doubt-free knowledge, and then we interact with the teacher, and it becomes clearer. Then we have a doubt-free knowledge. But then lastly, it's a non-forgettable knowledge. I forget all the time. Okay, so it's a forgettable knowledge, right? But even though it's forgettable, I'm quite clear on it now. So when I stop being an idiot, I go, oh, right? So here I am. I'm sitting here. I have the understanding that my existential condition is the result of laws, but my encounter with God is precisely as I am. Precisely as I am. Not as I imagine myself to be or want to be. Right? This makes me, so first of all, and the understanding I am actually helpless in my existential condition. When you really know you're helpless, right, which is a wisdom, you stop struggling. The self-working turns off. Are you with me?
Yes.
And so I can be myself with this understanding. I can rest in no matter how so-called horrible my existential condition is. Now, the reality is we're in an existential condition cut off from reality. Now, when God opens our eyes, the wisdom, he's showing, here you are again, cut off from me. Okay. Now, so I'm cut off. I'm like this. You know, understand what I mean? You know that kind of, that self-dissatisfaction. I'm dramatizing it, but you know what I'm talking about. So this is a fact. So what I do is because I understand that my only refuge is reality. The only place that can transform me is the very presence of reality itself, which is intimately located in my existential condition. I find God as I am. Hey, look, isn't it? I mean, God, this is a relief. This is a relief. So I don't, let's say like I was doing my sitting this morning, and I remembered certain past experiences. I haven't been a saint, Suzanne. My life is checkered, and it comes up. The guilt or whatever it is, right? That comes up. Now, the normal reaction to guilt is to avoid it because you understand what I mean? Like you want to become something different, so you don't want. But in the understanding of Ishvara, you just remain as a guilty person. You remain as guilty. You don't fight. You just remain with this sense of tremendous guilt. And what happens is, because right here, right now, as I am, is the presence of God. This is Dayananda's fundamental teaching, that an appointment with myself is an appointment with God. This is, so I remain with that. And then what happens is this existential condition starts to melt. So here I am, I'm caught up in it, the confusion's there, and I'm being shown the confusion. I'm being shown that I am being guilty. The difference is I'm not going to try and fix it. I'm helpless before it. Right? Now, because I'm helpless before it, I'm this be still and know I'm God. You've heard that one? It's one from our Western scriptures. So I'm still with myself in the lap of God. And I know that, from the Shin thing, all we're asked to do is entrust. So I come like that, as I am, guilty, unhappy, miserable. I don't care. I just don't care. I don't care what I'm like. So then I'm with myself as this guilty person, feeling like, whatever, right? I don't care. This is the truth. Because it's there, I'm seeing it.
Right.
So I'm in this, now this is my starting point, the recognition of my actual existential condition. Because it's there, I'm seeing it.
Yes.
Now I'm in a position, because there's no denial, there's no rationalization, there's no resistance, there's no trying, there's no becoming. I'm being, aren't I? How honest is this? Now, because of that, because I am being what I am, that means that the presence of the light is manifesting as my existential condition. Without the presence of the light of awareness, how could I see it? I can't. Yes. So it's precisely here where the light of awareness is embracing me. Wow. Warmly, without it. So this is not negative. Seeing that I'm effed up is very, very good. It's just good because it's the light revealing this existence. So I stay here like this, entrusting, and then what happens is this is this beautiful process, the beautiful thing he's got, resolving the ego into Ishvara. It can only be a conscious process. It's not possible without, it has to be a conscious process. So because I'm embraced by awareness, I'm given the eyes of awareness, aren't I? So it's not dualistic. I'm being aware. I'm being aware in this light. Not like there's an awareness and I got my little awareness, or there's God's awareness and whatever. No, he gives us his awareness as our own. That's the gift, isn't it? Okay? Now, beautiful. So here I am. I'm in this existential condition like this, right? And I'm remaining. Okay? I'm now. What arises? And this is the action of the wisdom. What arises is what the Shin Buddhists call the entrusting heart. In other words, I am being entrusting. It's not, I've got this entrusting heart. I am being now the entrusting heart, aren't I? Okay. Now, in that entrusting, I'm being drawn into the very heart of reality, aren't I?
Very much.
And as I do that, the existential condition starts to melt. Can't help it. Into Ishvara. But the entrusting starts at the beginning and it's even at the end. It doesn't. That again, there's no difference. Right. There's no difference. So here I am. I'm with myself. My existential condition's there. And because I'm not struggling, I relax. Imagine you're stirring the pot, it keeps the waters rough. When you stop the stirring, the waters calm down. Like that, really, kind of thing, right? So that's the feeling. So what happens is you're melting into the very heart of reality. Do you know what I mean?
And this is nididhyasana. Absolutely.
Nididhyasana enables you to do this because you're living the understanding. You realize you're helpless. You realize that you're embraced by this omni-active presence. It's only this reality penetrating into you and taking you up, grasping you and drawing it. That's the only thing that saves you. Nothing else.
And do you find that your compassion has evolved or increased as a result of this? Understanding?
The Shin Buddhists call it softness in mind and body. When I'm in the lap of Ishvara, in fact, I don't hate anybody. I don't look at anyone. I look at everybody with kind eyes. I noticed that. I stop. I fall away from this very easily, Suzanne. What's happening in Australia politically and stuff. Some of the, so I fall away from it. But
you notice it.
Well, what happens is the light of wisdom obtains in me and brings me back. Goes,
beautiful.
Bede, you're losing your way. But I can't fix myself. I can't do any of this. It's just not true. So there's nothing. What's special is the love of God. It's not. What's special is the love of God. It's not the love that is God is what transforms us. There's nothing else. There's just but so this demands it's not an honesty like I'm honest in terms of truthfulness, but to be with myself exactly as I am in my misery is such an honest act. Does that make sense?
It's raw.
Raw, yes, exactly. It's raw, and it's because it's there. I'm seeing it. It's objective.
And your naked conscious self.
That's what he got me there. Because he got really like if someone had seen it, they would think that he was angry at me because he turned on me and he hit me right in the eye, and I thought, and I was so pissed off with him, thinking, well, he could have answered my question because I was saying to him, you said in the book here, but in the other book you said here, right? And he just turned around and he goes, and he was short, but he seemed so big, but he was actually a little guy, right? He said, just be your simple naked self. And he turned away from me, and I walked back to my room, and I was very upset. I was just mortified. And there I was, like, I was, like this, and then something clicked. But the thing is that we never think that God is ordinary. The presence of God is in my ordinary experience, particularly in my experience of pain and suffering and emptiness. We don't think that's so. What this enables us to do, he says that the basis of self-acceptance is the understanding of Ishvara.
Yes.
Now what happened to me is I don't mind if I suddenly see I'm angry or I'm furious or I'm vicious or I'm inferior. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not afraid of myself. Does that make sense?
Beautiful.
Because I know that this is the revealing light. The light of God is revealing me as what I'm really like, not what I think I'm like. And it's totally okay to rest in God as that. And in fact, that's my salvation. So that's the and that's why I never worry about the mind, because when I'm worrying about the mind, I'm not with myself, with my suffering. I've objectified it and I'm caught up in subjectivity. And do you know what he says about subjectivity? He says, not even God can help you when you're being subjective. Being subjective.
Wow. When you're being
subjective.
Yeah, just caught up in everything you have to think about yourself.
Because I'm seeing it, it's there. That's what he means by subjectivity. So because I'm seeing this anger or this guilt as my problem, it's there as my problem.
Right.
But when I am being guilty, what a relief. I don't have to work at being guilty, do I? I don't have to. It's comes natural. If I'm guilty, it's natural that I'm guilty. There's no effort in being what I'm like, is there?
That's powerful. I don't think anyone knows how to work with guilt favorably.
But that's right. Guilt, anger, depression,
or shame, all of that.
You know how Dayananda puts it all in one basket. Self-dissatisfaction. I hate being what I'm like. And because I hate being what I'm like, I move away from myself, right? I move away from myself. The process of becoming is a movement away from myself. When I remain with myself as I am, what happens to the process of becoming?
It's not important. It has no value.
It's not active in me. It's the only thing that turns it off is when I remain with myself as I am.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing, Suzanne. All the rest is.
I can see how much courage it takes to just remain with myself. Because I've been allergic to myself, my reactions, my resentment. I've been so adverse to myself for so long.
Right, but can I just say something about the courage thing?
Yes.
You don't have to be courageous. The wisdom says to you,
all right,
come as you are, place yourself in my hands, and I will draw you out of your existential condition and take you home.
But you have to be willing.
Yeah, of course. But your willingness comes through understanding.
That faith right there. That's where the faith button is needed.
But the faith is the understanding that that's true.
It is. That's right.
So when you actually understand that you remember he says that the location of the problem is you and the solution is you. He says that is you.
Right.
So when you have that understanding, you will then the understanding. It's not courage. You don't have to produce the courage.
Beautiful.
Because that, you see, fearlessness is the life of God. That's what fearlessness is. When we participate in that life, we become fearless. But not. It's not that I'm fearless.
I see.
We don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
And that's why the teachings are the blessing. Because when we understand the teachings, that's the blessing to be ourselves.
If wisdom obtains in us, then if the wisdom is obtaining in me, I can be with myself with my guilt because I understand that this is precisely where the resolution occurs. It's not that I'm being self-sacrificed. I just understand this is the only place there's a solution. So the wisdom is governing me, not me.
And there's not even a promise then that I'm depending on. There's just reality.
He said to me, when I was talking to him about this one day, he said, we are reality people. See, for Swami Dayananda, reality is God. And I put it in English because I relate to English better than Sanskrit. The life, light, and fullness that is ever present, that's embracing everything, is my life when I'm rooted in it.
Wow, that when is a pretty important.
That's right. It has to be knowledge, because otherwise I go, yes, I'm consciousness and I'm free and I'm timeless and all of this stuff. Well, okay, that's nice, having nice thoughts about myself, but it's not the same as being myself, is it? It's not the same. It's a very profound mistake, in my opinion.
Bede, why do you think so few people are attracted to this? It's not work. It's attracted to this life of Vedanta.
Well, because of that, the longing of God, right? The longing for God. People have that longing to go home, and they're seeking some way to do it. so what happens is, you meet, I've met people who've helped me spiritually outside the Vedantic tradition, for example, right? Greatly influenced by other things, right? It doesn't matter where it comes. We're naturally attracted to anything that will take us home. Naturally. And when we understand, so the problem is that gnosis is rare. That's the problem. It's rare. It's not, you know what I mean by rare?
All right. Yes.
It's not all over the place. Just because someone wears a robe doesn't mean that they have the vision as such. Dayananda had the vision. There's no doubt about the fact that he had the vision.
Right.
And you would verify that existentially because it would obtain in you as a way of seeing which changed you.
Yes.
And that was all I was interested in. You found that too, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. So that's the sweet spot, that gnosis.
That gnosis is the obtaining. It's God becoming present in your life as a way of seeing, which is also a way of being, which transforms you. So if I am sitting with myself and I'm feeling guilty about some past event, the wisdom says, okay, you're feeling guilty. Just simply remain with yourself, come to God as that, and just wait, and his very presence will transform that, will lift you out of that existential condition of I am guilty to I am relaxed. But you're still being truthful at the beginning and at the end, because it's a journey without distance. You're being what you are.
That's beautiful.
Most people think about this as a future. I want to be as my eyes, this beautiful, pristine consciousness when I haven't got my problems. Do you see what I mean? So they imagine them an object away, so it becomes becoming.
You presented this really clearly. I feel I understand this, the non-dual vision, the non-dual knowledge, the wisdom. I feel I've somehow digested it more fully.
Well, you see, what this is the whole point. He used to plead with us. He'd go, see the meaning. He'd go, wouldn't he?
Oh, that's so sweet.
Because in the seeing of the meaning. So what happens is, we've been discussing this.
Yeah.
And what happens is, when we see the meaning, there's a shift in us.
Yeah.
Not magic.
Yeah, a light went off in class Friday night. That's why I emailed you, because I wanted to understand this really, because I understood it. I saw the meaning. And so I appreciate just flushing it out more, so so I'm cognizant of it now.
Well, this is your birthday gift, Suzanne. Sylvia never lets me do anything like this on a Sunday, but
oh, it's very kind, Sylvia. Thank you. No, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I love that it's my birthday, and I love having satsang on my birthday and receiving this knowledge and these teachings.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Well, you're both very important to me. Both of you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
love you both.
Love you too.
Yeah, love you too.